Hi, I'm Lowell Lohman. I've owned 64 separate businesses, played on 6 state and national championship teams in 2 different sports. I am a businessman, athlete, father, and husband, all while being a type 1 diabetic. In this series, let us show you principles in business and sports that can apply to your life with diabetes. Way back years ago, there's a couple things that left an impression on me, and probably the first thing that left an impression on me was this picture that you see of a car that a gentleman was talking about it. And if you have diabetes, it's a day-to-day struggle, but it left an impression on me and still does. And he used the comparison of an automobile. If you take the shocks off of a car, that car will still get you from A to B, but by the time you get there, if it doesn't have shocks on it, that car is going to fall apart at some point. Every time I eat a meal, that type of thing, my entire life, I have focused on that and said that you can cheat every day. It's a challenge every day for diabetics. And the answer is you can get away with it, but you'll pay for it further down the road. I'm 77 years old, been a diabetic for 58 years, and there's no doubt in my mind, I'm still here. I'm not going away anytime soon. All of us are trained to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and the majority of my life I did that like everybody else. But what happens is when you do that, you eat breakfast, your blood sugar goes straight up, and normally your insulin stays working for like 4 hours roughly. But it goes way up, then it crashes and comes down, then you eat lunch, it goes way up like this, and for probably half of my life, it was like that yo-yo. And I've read a couple books, probably 15, 20 years ago, and I don't eat 3 meals a day, I eat 5 or 6 meals a day. Every day when I get up, I usually have Cheerios with strawberries and blueberries and that type thing. But what I do now that I didn't do for all those years is I eat half of my cereal. I take the other half, I put it in the fridge. I come back an hour and a half later and I eat the other half. And for lunch every day, pretty much with a few exceptions, I have a turkey sandwich that Nancy makes me. I have a turkey sandwich. I eat an apple a day, and I don't eat the whole sandwich. If we go to lunch with friends or something like that, it's kind of funny. I'll eat half of that sandwich, and then I have them box the other half up, and then I take it home and I eat it. But for diabetics, those valleys, those peaks, and going like this, and my sugar nowadays has hills on it, like this, versus the peaks. And I think those are the 2 things that I could say to all diabetics is try to get out of that jamming, eating a big meal all this time and everything and going way up and then crashing and coming down. So I think those are the two things that I like to tell diabetics that aren't aware of that.
Well, for me, being a partner of Lowell and helping him with his diabetes, it means every time he says he's low or he's having a reaction, that means his blood glucose level has gone low. And so when it goes low, we have to treat it. And we treat it in fun ways, things he likes, orange juice, Reese cups, the things that normally you go to if you just really love, even if you weren't a diabetic. I think that's part of the secret of having those things on hand that you will eat if you can't think clearly.
Exactly.
You'll go to the things that you love,
yeah,
which are orange juice and Reese cups in this case.
Pretty much.
And so that's what he means when his sugar is low. So he has a reaction, that's what we call it. I think people refer to it differently. Certainly Lowell has been really lucky that he's had this great attitude to go along with it.
Yeah.
Your positive attitude, I think, has been a huge part of handling your diabetes so well.
Thanks.
And living this living this long and living such a healthy life. And I remember one time saying to Lowell, I am so sorry that you have to deal with this. And Lowell turned to me, and this was in the middle of kind of a reaction. He was having his orange juice or his Reese cups and couldn't get them in fast enough, and I eat them quick enough. And I said, I'm so sorry you have to deal with this. And he said, you know what, Nancy, I can handle it. And that is, to me, the one thing that has made me understand that it's so much about having a positive attitude, about just dealing with this on an everyday basis.
It's not going away. I mentioned, I think earlier, I'm 77 years old, been a diabetic for 58 years. My younger brother, Victor, is a type 1 diabetic also. He's been one for 47 years now. He's 71 years old now. We are both here. We're not going away anytime soon. But I go back to this car that's fallen apart, and it's motivated me for those 30 or 40 years. And the average diabetic is probably overweight. They're not paying attention to their diet the way they should be and those type things. I say all the time, I'm not probably the most detailed person in the planet, but I married the most detailed person I know. But I am very structured, and I think it's called habits. It's called doing the right thing, getting it, that type thing. And I think from A to Z, my A1C is always like 6.2 to 6, somewhere in there. It used to be for years, it was in the 7s, which is probably where most diabetics are. A lot of them are 10 times worse than that. You know, it's not going away. And once you get used to it, it's called habits and discipline. Nancy and Ty, our son Ty, had an author up in St. Augustine come down and do wrote a book called The Lohman Way on us Lohmans and what we did, and those type things. And structure has a lot to do with it. And I think, and he kept asking me, he said, where did you come from? You know, you've owned 64 businesses, you know, you played competitive sports till you were 45 years old. You've had all these companies, largest private owner of funeral homes and cemeteries with 34 funeral homes and cemeteries. And he just kept saying, as he's writing the book, he kept saying, where did you come from? And I told him, I never analyzed myself till 3 or 4 years ago. And I said, I came from sports. I mean, I have 2 younger brothers. We played football, baseball, and everything in the front yard like every afternoon growing up. And I realized when I was 11 or 12 years old that I was probably going to be a pretty good athlete. And I think every team I ever played on, I was captain. You know, usually the coaches pick 1 or 2 guys to be the captain.
And most valuable player.
Yeah, and most valuable player, and voted best athlete in my high school, the whole type deal. And I think the sports is what was fairly easy for me to transfer to the diabetes. It's called systems, it's called habits, that type thing. And I'm not the most detailed, but I am incredibly structured. And there's a difference between, it's called list, you know, those type things. And I just accept it. It's not going away. And
don't you think there are definitely easier ways to live your life as a diabetic than others? And I think you choose to make it as easy on yourself as you can by preparing in little ways. So we don't travel without a gold lame bag in my purse that, you know, I have it right here, that Lowell always knows that this is filled with candy if his sugar goes low. So we have systems and we have detail in our lives that help us be prepared. So we always make sure we have plenty of insulin supplies on hand. And that's something that we probably take for granted, that hopefully most diabetics have an opportunity to have a handle on. But it's certainly a reason why we were so thankful to start the Lohman Diabetes Center at Halifax Health, was so that we can avail other people with making their lives easier if they have diabetes, right? With education and with insulin supplies. And you're lucky enough to have the Tandem pump and the Dexcom. And one of the things that I think is also really important that you've done is embrace technology. You have not been afraid to get your arms around the latest and greatest technology. And granted, there are some people who have diabetes that don't have that opportunity, right? They may not be able to financially to have those opportunities, and we're working to change that and to help people who do have those obstacles. But for sure, you at 77 years old have embraced the newest, the latest, and the greatest. And it hasn't always been easy, has it? When we've changed from one device to another, or just trying a new device, that's been a learning curve. And you and I have both been pretty stressed out at times trying to get our arms around this technology, right? I mean, we print out all the papers, we have them in front of us, we have all the supplies in front of us. we read the directions and then we read them out loud again. And, you know, it's step by step by step on putting your insulin pump insertion set in, changing the pump and adding more insulin. I mean, all of those things that seem like we do it in 2 minutes now. At first, it took us 10, 15, 20 minutes, and we were scared and nervous and stressed out about it. So it's not easy, but I think together we've done those things together, and I think it's made it a little easier.
Way back years ago, I had a stepdad, and he used to tell me frequently from time to time, he'd say, Lochi, he'd say, there are only 2 things really important in life, right? And he would say, the most important thing in your life is the person you spend the rest of your life with. And way back when I was younger, I didn't realize that 100%, but it's 100% correct.
Yeah.
And he would say, the most important thing in your life is that person. And it's 100% correct. Guess how lucky I am. But the other thing he would say is and the second most important thing is the career that you choose that lets the 2 of you enjoy your life together. I think Nancy and I are enjoying our life together. But the important thing he said is he would always say, whatever's third is so far behind those first 2, it doesn't even matter. And in case you can't tell, and I say this to all diabetics out there, that person that hopefully is there, it is so comforting. Part of the reason I'm still here at 77 is because of this lady sitting next to me. And I say all the time, I'm the happiest guy you know. I married Cinderella. So it's not hard to figure that out. So for all diabetics out there, you know, it's having to face all these problems by yourself is a big load. And if you have somebody that's involved with you and that type of thing, it sure makes it a heck of a lot simpler. I did a pretty good job with that, by the way. Yeah.
Sometimes Lowell will turn to me and say, do you feel like you have diabetes too?
Yeah.
I'll say, yeah, I do feel like I do have diabetes.
Yeah.
And now even our whole life, like I don't say, what do you want for dinner? I'll say, how's your sugar?
Yeah.
I don't even realize I'm saying it, but I'm like, how's your sugar? Which means, is it time to eat or do we need to wait a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Well, like a lot of diabetics, when you have an insulin reaction, you can get a little irritable. You can get a little lightheaded almost, like hard to focus, yeah. And I can usually tell when Lola's having a reaction. I can tell that something doesn't seem right. And I'll say, where's your sugar? Or do you need to test your sugar? Or, you know, where are we? And most of the time, Lowell you recognize you're in a reaction is sooner probably than I see it in your eyes.
One of the great things Nancy mentioned earlier is the pump. Tonight I have an insulin pump. And I was on the Medtronic for like 15 years, and then the Tandem and the what is the other?
The Dexcom.
And the Dexcom just came out like a year ago, so I changed about a year ago.
They work hand in hand.
Yeah, I changed pumps. But one of the good things about it, and this is exciting for all diabetics in the future, is that once my blood sugar goes down to 110, if it's starting, you want to make sure if it goes too low that it hurts you. If you're not sure, then take it high. That's not as, but it's when it goes low that'll hurt you most of the time. But at 110, my pump will vibrate a little bit, and it'll make a noise and let me know, okay, you're at 110. And then at like 90, if I go down to 90, this pump automatically, all by itself, shuts down on the amount of insulin going into my body. Diabetics, the pump continuously is putting a small amount of insulin in you. And if I'm going too low, this pump, I do nothing, it shuts off. It'll shut off. And the other thing is if it goes too high, once it hits like 180, it vibrates and lets me know that it's higher than 180. And then if it goes to 200, it will increase my insulin automatically. I touch nothing. The exciting thing about that for diabetics, that's only come out in the last 3 years, something like that, if I had to guess. Yeah, pretty recently. And as a diabetic, it is, I spent all those years of my life taking 2 to 3 shots a day, having a hard time keeping it under control and everything. But the technology today is so much easier on diabetics. And the problem that you have is the pump that we have right now costs, when we bought it several years ago, it was like $7,500. And the crazy thing is there are a lot of diabetics out there that can't afford that. And through the Lohman Diabetes Center and that type of thing, we're trying to change that a little bit. But I get excited when I think about it because this is very close. It's not the ultimate solution now. It's very close to the point to where this little pump is the most amazing thing on the planet. It's getting to the point to where us diabetics won't have to do anything. This pump gauges where my sugar is, and it either increases or decreases to keep it in that zone of 110 to 180, basically. And in the future, I see a day coming where, as a diabetic, all you'll have to do is add insulin, every 4 or 5 days, when it runs out in your pump. And that is so exciting compared to 30 and 40 years ago. If you were a diabetic, it was a day-to-day grind. It is so much easier today. It's amazing.
But it's not a perfect science. We've definitely had a lot of stories that we could share
Yes.
of moments in time where we've been a bit under stress. Is that a good way to say it?
Yeah.
Recently we were at a party where it was Ty's 50th birthday party, actually, our son's birthday party. And all of a sudden I said, "Where's Lowell?" And I saw him sort of drifting away from the party. And I said, "Uh-oh." And so I follow him out and we go into the garage where the caterers are prepping foods and drinks and desserts and things.
Yeah.
And Lowell sat in the back seat, I think of Ty or Tova's car. I sat in the front seat right there. We opened the doors and the caterers are running in and out. And we're like, "We're just hanging out in the garage."
Yeah.
and I got you some orange juice, which, helped,
Takes
I
a
think.
while.
It takes a while, that's right. We got you some desserts. But we sat out in the garage for, until pretty much the party was over. We missed the last hour of the party.
Yeah.
But I think as a diabetic, don't you think you just have to accept that
You
those
do.
moments in life are going to happen?
Can I tell you, it's I do everything I can so that it doesn't put pressure on Nancy, but she's all over it, which is very comforting. But you can't change it. There's something out there that says change what you can and accept what you can. And I think I majored in college. I majored in biology and chemistry, and I think that kind of helped me a little bit with some of the mechanics and understanding what's happening. And you can either fight it or not fight it. I see so many diabetics, and if I know someone's a diabetic and we're having dinner with them or something, I pay attention to what they're eating. It's scary. I mean, what they're doing, eating pies and stuff like that and everything. And I go back to this book, you can cheat every day. And I think on a scale of 1 to 10, I think I'm probably a 9 3/4.
Oh, you are fantastic.
I'm not doing it.
You are a poster child for diabetes.
I am not doing it. Every time something goes in my mouth, I say, there are X number of carbs, in that. I need to give myself X number of units of insulin to cover it. All of a sudden, if you concentrate, it will become a habit. I don't do that. One of the things is alcohol. I think when I was in high school and college, I was always the designated driver. Guess why? I know playing all the sports I played growing up, I didn't drink. I didn't drink in high school. I'd like to say I didn't drink in college, but I think my last year or two I did have a drink every now and then. Today when we go out socially and everything and everybody's having drinks and everything, probably the majority of the time, 70, 80% of the time, I don't drink. Every now and then, I'm honest with it. Every now and then, if it's a big party or whatever, I order a shot of Crown Royal, and the person brings it, and then I'll order a tall glass of ice, and Nancy is incredible. I used to mix it with Diet Coke, but there's a lot of caffeine in Diet Coke, so I have to be careful with that because I don't want to that'll just charge you all up, everything. But I pay total attention to it.
Yeah.
And Nancy gets me diet ginger ale that doesn't have caffeine in it. So I order a shot and a tall glass of ice, and that's it. And then Nancy reaches in her purse and brings out a little bottle of diet.
And it is pretty interesting, isn't it, that
Yeah.
restaurants and every place we go,
Yeah.
there are so many diabetics now. I think that's
Oh, yeah.
1 out of 6 or
6 or
7 in
7
Volusia County.
Absolutely.
And so the wait staffs at the restaurants and
Yeah.
places we go are used to this. Because if
Yeah.
I say, "Could I please have an orange juice?" I usually don't say it's for you. I just
Yeah.
say, "Could I please have an orange juice?"
Yeah.
And I probably say it with a sense of urgency, right?
And they know.
Like, I need it now.
Yeah.
But if I just say it, could I please have an orange juice?
Yeah.
They'll bring it right away.
Yeah, they will.
And when I pull out diet ginger ale or diet Sprite, I'll say, my husband really can't have caffeine or sugar. They get it. Nobody says you're not allowed to bring that in, right? They all get it that you must be, or there must be a diabetic at the table. You know it can't be new for the people that we run into, because they react to it as if they know what's coming. Don't you think?
Yeah. Over the years, take that one shot, and that'll last me the entire night. And usually when we leave, there's still half of the shot there. And I found out that if I drink half a shot, I can tell it gives me that little bit of a feeling. But if you go to the second shot and the third shot and the fourth shot, I wouldn't recommend that to anybody. And you have to be disciplined with that. But I limit myself to a half a shot, and I can tell it makes me feel a little bit better, and I feel like I'm part of everybody else. But it's
You're
crazy.
part of the party.
Roger, it's crazy. All our friends, when we go out and everything, all of our friends see Nancy getting all this stuff and lining it up for me there. So anyway, you just learn to live with it, and it's part of life, and I plan on doing that for a lot longer.
One of our good friends, Mike Panaggio, always says, Lowell, we're going to go to lunch, and I'm going to watch you not eat.
Yeah.
Because Lowell's always afraid that you'll have too much.
Yeah.
You're not sure what's in the food, so you're really careful what you eat or how much you eat, because you're trying to gauge your sugar kind of subtly without making a big deal about it in a public place. But at the same time, you know that in restaurants, a lot of times the food has a lot more sugar, a lot more salt, a lot more calories than you're used to eating.
I'm so glad she brought that up, because that is a biggie. You think after having years and years of being a diabetic, you think you know what's in cereal, you think you know what's in a sandwich and that type thing, and all of a sudden you go to the restaurants and everything, and I think they put more sugar in most of the products they give you because it tastes better, and we understand that. But time and time again, we'll be out somewhere and I'll look at something and I'll say, well, there's X carbs there, and I'll eat it. And then a couple hours later when we go home, I look and my sugar's sky high. And my brain says, wait a minute, I can't. So you have to be very careful when you're going out to restaurants and everything, because you don't know how much is in there.
Yeah.
And over a period of time, I go back to the car right here. It's those shocks. Over a period of time, it'll take its toll on you. So we are all over that pretty much. But
and even at home, we know what food you like, right? And so we've kept track of that, and we've calculated how many carbs are in each thing that we make that we enjoy eating.
Yes.
Right? So if Lowell has a turkey sandwich for lunch, and we put sliced apple on it, and we use really low carb wheat bread, right?
Yeah.
We know that there are 40 carbs in that sandwich.
Yeah.
We just know there are.
Yeah.
And if we're not sure, we write them on a sheet of paper so we can keep track of it.
Yeah.
But it is interesting how many people don't recognize that the number of carbs in a Red Delicious apple and the number of carbs in a Honeycrisp apple are night and day. You go from 15 to 35 and like this in one apple, and the size and the type of apple. So I do think there's some education involved in understanding what you eat and what the carbs are. That's another part of diabetes that's so hard, is taking the time to get yourself educated, understanding what you need to educate yourself on. If I had to boil it down to one thing, I would say it all comes down to counting carbs.
That's
what I think. It all comes down to counting carbs.
One of the disappointing things to me is when we meet diabetics, and I think a lot of people, I never told anyone I was a diabetic to 3 or 4 years ago. Not that it was a big deal. You don't want them to feel sorry for you. So I never brought it. If they asked or got into it, I would talk to them. But up till 3 or 4 years ago, when we got involved with Halifax Health and that type thing and started that diabetes center, I now tell everybody I'm a diabetic, okay? So it's kind of funny. I think most diabetics are like that. But the other observation that I've made over here is the majority of diabetics are overweight. If you think about that, time and time again, and my brain says, I can tell already, you're not taking care of yourself the way you should be. Victor and I are both lucky in that we're fairly thin. But it's an observation that I make, and the first thing that I think is this person doesn't have his diabetes, in control the way they should. But so excited to have Halifax Health because we are helping a lot of diabetics right now. There are only, I think, 3 or 4 endocrinologists in the Daytona Beach area. The majority of the diabetics here are going to Orlando for help. And every endocrinologist we have, in this area is not taking any new patients. I know we have like 200 to 300 people that are on a wait list at Halifax Health and the Lohman Diabetes Center. We are hopefully bringing in a second endocrinologist here in the next 6 months or so. But we're bringing in nurse. What is the title that they have?
A nurse practitioner.
We're bringing a couple of them in to kind of help us with the load. But we are really making a difference. There was nothing out there 3 or 4 years ago, but it's Nancy's and my focus, I think, for the rest of our life to help as many diabetics. We can go nowhere. We go anywhere socially. People are knocking tables over to come over and say hi to us. And it's amazing. Everybody comes over and says, I'm a diabetic. And that's a good sign because in the last 3 to 4 years, we have some things that they didn't have before. So it's an exciting period. And, it's all about education. And we just thank Halifax Health for, realizing the demand that was out there. I think it opened their eyes a little bit once we got into it and they realized how many of us that are out there.
So you can kind of see that I'm an organized person. So when Lowell first said, I need to be able to get a hold of my snacks, it made sense to me. So we said, let's just make this whole bottom shelf the snacks that are your go-to. And that has been a really wise decision for us to say, okay, if you need a glucose tablet, they're here. If you need a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, if you need no sugar added fruit, it's here. If you need the go-to, if you're having a low sugar reaction, we've got Reese cups. We've kind of put all of his favorite things that are go-tos if he needs to bring his sugar level up. And that has been really helpful to have it all right here, right beside the refrigerator. The other thing that's been really helpful is every time we've had something that he's really liked, like a turkey sandwich, and we said, how many carbs exactly are in this? So we don't have to rethink it and say, well, how much is in the bread? How much is in the bologna or the turkey? How much is in the relish? How much is in the apple? We don't have to do any of that thinking. We just come right here and go, oh, okay. So I see that on a turkey sandwich, this is how many carbs are in those. So we've calculated his favorite foods and how many carbs are in each of these. And then he's taken it a step further and he's made all kinds of notes, like things that are good for you and what things are bad for you for your kidneys. Like for instance, who knew that tomatoes weren't great? Who knew that cantaloupe isn't as good a fruit as eating berries, that kind of a thing. So we've made these notes here. And then this sheet, which is a little hard to see, but this is his go-to. So this sheet right here, I don't know if I can take this off or not. This sheet has been, here's Lowell's typical breakfast, 45 carbs, his typical lunch, 50 carbs. See, we originally counted 54, but through the experiments of, wait a minute, that seemed like a little bit too much insulin for the sandwich. Does that make sense that his sugar went lower than 110, which is our goal? So we adjusted the amount of carbs based on his reaction to that sandwich. Because he loves that sandwich, we have it every day, we've adjusted. So his breakfast, Cheerios, almond milk, strawberries, a half a cup, blueberries and raspberries, all together 45 carbs. And that's based on his portion of breakfast. His lunch, this is the turkey sandwich with apple, 50 carbs. His dinner, that's typically a salad with lots of wonderful things in it, like strawberries and blueberries and apple. That right here in croutons, that's 40 carbs. Now, sometimes it varies. What we have for dinner isn't always what's on here, but these are the go-tos. These are our favorite things. And it takes a lot to add all the different ingredients up and figure out how many carbs. So it's good to just do it once and then put it on a list. And that's what we've done. So we've put all kinds of things on this list and the amount of carbs that are associated with it. And then these were things that we know how many carbs are in, and it's just Lowell's go-tos. Like he really likes every once in a while a turkey dog. I know that probably isn't good for him, but he loves them. And so every once in a while we'll have them. And so it's kind of on his list of, okay, what I really like, or chicken noodle soup, or if I need a snack, it's a real treat to have a waffle with sugar-free syrup. those are the kinds of things that we do to sort of help us manage. And because his snack shelf is right beside the refrigerator, his insulin's in the refrigerator, his glucometer's in the cabinet, we just kind of keep this as it's kind of our diabetic corner, and it works. It works really well for us. And we've shown a lot of people this. In fact, this past Saturday night, Lowell's brother came over because he was out of insulin. And we were talking about the checklist and how we do things. And that's been another, we hate that Victor has diabetes also, but what a blessing it has been in our lives to have someone else to go to and to have them have us to go to. So as a piece of advice, finding a buddy to share this kind of information with is really valuable. How do you do it? What do you eat? How many carbs are in this, that, or the other? And then having that person that you can call at 11 o'clock at night or 2 in the morning and say, I'm out of insulin, or I'm out of syringes, or I don't have any AA batteries and everything's closed. Now I guess places aren't closed, but we were in Aspen one time and his pump ran out of a battery and we could not get that battery. We had to go to the emergency room at 4 in the morning. I mean, that's the life of a diabetic. We were on a plane to Dubrovnik, Croatia, and we thought he had his glucometer with him with all the supplies. I opened up the bottle of chem strips. There was only 1 chem strip left. And that was before he was on the Dexcom or the Libre. There was no way we could find out what his sugar was at that point. And then we landed in Croatia after flying 24 hours, because we first went to Rome, then Dubrovnik, and our luggage didn't come in. So we had to talk to the bellman about getting to a pharmacy and getting a glucometer for us at midnight. It was so stressful. We've had a lot of situations like that. But, that's why we always, are thankful if we have someone that we're traveling with that can help us, or just that plan. Where do we go? Who do we ask for help if we need help? Do we stay in a nice hotel that has a concierge or a bellman? Do we have people in that country that speak English? Can we count on that? Do we have extra supplies? Do I carry on supplies and pack them? Yes, because what if that happened again to us? So we can't afford for that to happen. So we learned. Now you don't just pack your glucometer, you open it up and say, are there chem strips in this bottle of chem strips, before you just assume there's enough for you to last for 6, 7, 8 days or however long you're traveling. So there's a lot to it. It's good to have a plan. I say make a plan and work your plan. But if you're a diabetic, it's particularly important to have a plan like this, to be well prepared, to have a buddy system, to have backup plans, and then of course to have the right attitude that it's just a part of life.